Hey everyone, welcome to the first video in a new mythology series. So the plan is for me to gradually build separate video playlists for various cultural mythologies, including Greek, Norse, Irish, Egyptian, possibly some Shinto, maybe even some indigenous Australian as well. Who knows? To start with, I figured it was best to go with the mythology that I am most familiar with, which is Greek, and it seemed logical that the first video for each mythology should be the associated creation myth. So here we are. Now I should note that Greek mythology is incredibly vast, and there are deities and spirits for almost every aspect of nature and the human experience. It is also not set in stone. When people say ancient Greece, they are generally referring to a period that actually lasted more than 1500 years. Unsurprisingly, there was a natural evolution and reinterpretation of the mythology by the Greeks themselves during this period, which of course makes a comprehensive account of the subject incredibly difficult. For the sake of keeping things as simple as they can be, for this video I have chosen to use the most commonly accepted version of the creation myth, which draws mostly from the ancient epic poem Theogony, composed by 8th century BCE poet Hesiod, and also the Bibliotheca, a 1st century CE text written by a mysterious figure known to many historians as Pseudo-Apollodorus. First and foremost, this video is essentially going to be a family tree. There are 3 generations, if you want to call them that, of Greek gods. The primordial deities, the Titans, and finally the most well known, the Olympians, which includes Zeus, Poseidon, etc. Obviously these generations are not entirely distinct from each other, and there was substantial overlap between them. If I tried to fit all 3 generations in one video, things would get real messy real quick, and we would miss most of the nuance of Greek mythology, which is arguably the best part. So, we will be starting with the primordial gods. There are not really any super dramatic or juicy myths in this first video, unfortunately. There are no monsters being slain or sex addict Zeus turning into animals to seduce women. Those will come later. This is really just setting the scene and will likely be referred to many times in future videos as we delve further into the mythology. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get stuck into the weirdness that is Greek mythology. In the beginning, there was only chaos. Now, this was not chaos in the sense that we now use the word, as a kind of absence of order, but rather it was in its original literal meaning, a gaping, empty void. I should note here that the Greeks conceptualized many of these early deities as personifications. So while chaos is literally a gaping void, it is also an ungendered being capable of birthing offspring. So, from chaos came the very first deities. First came Gaia, the personification of the earth. She was, quite literally, Mother Earth. After Gaia came Tartaros, the dim abyss that formed the deepest reaches of the underworld. Next came Eros, the personification of love and sex. And finally, there were Nyx and Erebus, personifications of night and darkness, respectively. These are the original primordial deities, from whom all other beings in Greek mythology are descended, with the exceptions of Kronos, god of time, and Ananke, goddess of necessity. Now Gaia gave birth to 2 powerful beings that had no father. The first was Uranos, often romanized as Uranus, who was the personification of the sky, and who would eventually become his mother's equal. The second was Pontos, the personification of the sea. Now this is where things start to get a bit freaky deaky, because if you thought Gaia was gonna get down with her sons, you'd be absolutely right. With Uranos, Gaia produced 3 sets of children. The first was a set of 12. These were the most powerful of their offspring, the ones who would shape the future of the world. They were the Titans. To be honest, they probably could have stopped having children there, because things were already weird enough. I'm looking at you, fish boy. The second set were the 3 Cyclops, the one-eyed giants Brontes, Steropes, and Arges. Okay, it's not too bad. I mean, it's just the eye that's weird. It's not the end of the world. It's fine. The last set were the Hecatonchires, literally the 100-handed ones. 3 colossal monsters with 50 heads and 100 arms. If this isn't a warning about the dangers of keeping it in the family, I don't know what is. As it happens, these massive creatures would act as catalysts for some of the most important events in the Greek mythological timeline. Now, unlike her copulation with Uranos, Gaia's union with Pontos was far less, how should I say, dramatic? Though, having said that, some of their grandchildren would rival those of Uranos in monstrosity. Anyway, between her get-down with Pontos and the marriage between the titan Okeanos and his sister wife Tethys, Gaia became the progenitor of all aquatic deities. From the seas, to the rivers, to the natural springs, they all came from Gaia. Now, while Gaia and her sons produced the physical elements of the world, with some monsters thrown in to make things interesting, Nyx and Erebus also paired off. Together, they produced 2 sets of children. The first set was Hemera, personification of day, and Ether, personification of light and the upper air that the gods breathe. The second set were the brothers Hypnos and Thanatos, sleep and death. However, Nyx ain't need no man to do her thing. With no input from Erebus or any other male deity, she gave birth to a whole bunch of abstract personifications, an array of deities that included hope, old age, and strife, among many others. This kind of specificity is characteristic of Greek mythology. Pretty much every facet of the human experience, from fear to friendship, has a personified deity. Indeed, Eris, personification of strife, would go on to have a whole gaggle of her own children, personifying such wonderful concepts as ruin, murder, and starvation. So in these primordial deities, we can see the construction of the world as the Greeks knew it, layer by layer, both in a physical sense, but also in an abstract, human sense as well. Okay, that's it for our primordial family tree. This is obviously a significantly pared back version, as there are many more minor primordial deities. We will go through some of the more important ones in future videos, but to be honest, it's not really necessary to go through them all. In any case, I realise I've thrown a whole bunch of names at you pretty quickly, but I think it's important to do both so that you can get a sense of how the Greeks perceived their world, but also to set the scene for the rest of the series, because this is the foundation upon which the rest of Greek mythology is built. So make sure you stick around if you want to see more Greek mythology videos. Thanks for watching. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. For more history content, you can also head over to the Real History website via the link in the description. I would also like to thank my patrons. As ever, your support has been invaluable. If you are considering becoming a patron of Real History, you can head over to Patreon via the link in the description to check out the sort of benefits that come with being a Patreon supporter. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.